Oh, man, what is it about Christmas? What is it about Christmas that is such a magical time of year? What is it? Well, first of all, Christmas is filled with excitement. Yeah, I know, we as adults have had a lot of that trained out of us, but you got to see Christmas through the eyes of a child to appreciate the excitement of Christmas. I read a really cool story. It's just called Sharon's Christmas Story. Sharon was 5 years old and sure of the facts and recited them slow and serious, convinced that every word was divine revelation. Here's what she said. They were so poor that they only had peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to eat. And they went a long way from home without getting lost. The lady rode on a donkey, the man walked, and the baby was inside the lady. They had to stay in a stable with an ox and an ass. But the 3 rich men found them because a star lighted the roof. Shepherds came, and you could pet the sheep, but you couldn't feed them. Then the baby was born. And you know who he was? And her quarter-sized eyes got as big as silver dollars. And she said, the baby was God. And then she jumped in the air and she whirled around and she dove into the sofa and buried her head under the cushion. Which from my perspective is the only appropriate response to the Christmas story. Can you see it? Isn't it wonderful? After telling the Christmas story, she jumped in the air and whirled around and dove into the sofa and buried her head under the cushion. Now, if you've ever been around a small child at Christmas time, you know exactly what that looks like. Excitement. Christmas is an exciting time of year. The New Yorker magazine a few years back showed God sitting majestically in the heavens, in the heavenly throne with stars twinkling all around him. And the planet Earth was visible in the distance. And the Almighty is looking at the earth, and he says, now don't you make me come down there. But coming down here is exactly what God did. The God of all creation came into our world. The Christmas story is an exciting story. Well, the second thing that makes Christmas so magical is the uniqueness of the child who was born and the importance of his message. I love a story I once read about a great chief who was very proud. One day he was walking through his village boasting, I am truly great. There is no one greater than me. A wise old woman came up to the chief and said, I know one who is truly great. The chief was surprised, and then he became angry. What? Who is great? Who is this great one? There is no one greater than me. The wise old woman said, come to my house tomorrow when the sun is at its highest point in the sky, and I will introduce you to this great one. The chief said, very well, I will be there, and we shall see who is the greatest. Well, the chief went home and he got a good night's sleep to gain his strength. And in the morning, he prepared himself carefully and put on his finest clothing. And as he did, he reminded himself of all the great things that he could do. There is no one greater than me, he repeated to himself as he walked over to the old woman's house. When he reached the house, he called out, old woman, I am here. It is time. Where is the other chief? Come in, the old woman called. When the chief entered the old woman's house, he saw the old woman sitting against the wall with a baby crawling on the floor beside her. The chief looked around. There was no one else there. Where is the great chieftain you told me about yesterday? He asked. The old woman motioned toward the baby and said, this is the great one I told you about. Well, the great chief was not amused. He yelled angrily at the old woman and shook his finger at her and said, what do you mean? Don't try and trick me. This is just a baby. Well, the baby was frightened by the sudden, loud, angry voice and began to cry. And the chief became flustered, and he didn't mean to make the baby cry. And he forgot about his anger, and he got down on his hands and his knees, and he pulled eagle and hawk feathers from his hair, and he brushed the baby's cheeks with them. And then he pulled off his medicine bag, and he held them under the baby's nose. And then he pulled off his necklace, and he jingled them by the baby's ears. And gradually, the baby stopped crying and began to listen and watch. The old woman smiled and said, you see, even you, the great chief, had to stop what you were doing and take care of the baby. In any home, in any village, the baby is truly great, because even the greatest and most powerful chief like you must become the baby's servant. This is how the Creator planned it. The Creator did not make you great so that you could boast about your greatness. The Creator made you great so that you could help others who are not as strong as you. And from that day on, no one ever heard the chief boast again. The most amazing claim that Christians make is that God came into the world in the form of a tiny baby. It is also the most appealing claim that Christians make. Now, God could have overwhelmed us with his power and majesty. Instead, God came to earth in the person of a helpless babe. No one would make up such a claim. It's fantastic, but it's true. The baby's life and message is like no other. And finally, Christmas is so magical because God fulfilled his plan. God fulfilled his plan. You know, we cannot separate Christmas from the entire Christ event. The coming of Christ into the world is part of a far greater drama. God was at work through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, redeeming the world to himself, a work that continues even to this day. In a book titled Whispering the Lyrics, Dr. Tom Long takes us back to an ugly time in our own history. During the prime days of the struggle for racial integration in the South, black civil rights workers, freedom riders they were called, would travel on buses from city to city, challenging segregationist laws. Sometimes they were greeted with violence. Often they were arrested. In one town, a bus was halted by the police, and the passengers booked and jailed. And while they were there, the jailers did everything possible to make them miserable and to break their spirits. They tried to deprive them of sleep with noise and lights during the night. They intentionally oversalted their food to make it taste bad. They gradually took away their mattresses one by one, hoping to create conflict over the remaining ones. Eventually, this strategy seemed to be taking hold. Morale in the jail cells was beginning to sag. And one of the jailed leaders, looking around one day at his dispirited fellow prisoners, began to softly sing a spiritual. And slowly, others joined in until the whole group was singing at the top of their lungs, and the puzzled jailers felt the entire cell block vibrating with the sounds of a joyful gospel song. When they went to see what was happening, the prisoners triumphantly pushed the remaining mattresses through the cell bars, and they said, "You can take our mattresses, but you can't take our souls." Tom Long says, it was the hymn singers who were in jail, but it was the jailers who were guilty. It was the prisoners who were suffering, but the jailers who were defeated. It was the prisoners who were in a position of weakness, but it was the broken and bigoted world of jailers that was perishing. God's plan is being accomplished, and you can't stop God. Once God begins moving, the best you can do is either join the parade or get out of the way. God was at work in the manger of Bethlehem. God was at work redeeming the world to himself. No wonder Christmas is so magical. Christmas is an exciting time. God has come into the world, and God's plan for the world is being fulfilled. You know, one of the annual Christmas television specials that always brightens up the season is the Charlie Brown Christmas. In this special, Charlie Brown directs a Christmas play, and he hunts for the perfect tree. And Linus expounds on the true meaning of Christmas. Now, when the special was first shown, the folks at CBS were concerned that the use of actual Bible quotes in the special would turn off viewers. Imagine that, religion intruding into a Christmas special. But Peanuts creator Charles Schulz was insistent, and so Linus recites from the book of Luke during the show, telling the same story that I just read for you tonight. Here is something I hope you noticed in the show. Linus, who was famously and obsessively attached to his security blanket, lets go of it when he tells the story of Jesus' birth. And why shouldn't he? Why shouldn't he? Christ is our only true security. He is our peace, our hope, our joy. God has come into our world in the babe of Bethlehem. This is the most exciting thing that has ever happened. This baby was God in human form. And through this child born in Bethlehem, God fulfilled his plan for us to know him, to love him, and to live eternally with him. Christmas is magical. It just doesn't get any better than this. Joy to the world, the Lord has come. Amen.
Thanks for watching. I hope this video can further the discussion of your relationship with Christ, either at home or maybe in the comments below.